Hey y'all, it's your girl Shreebad. I hope my last upload wasn't too much for your brain. I know it was a lot to take in, it was a whole hour. But today I want to make it a little bit shorter. If you celebrate a holiday, happy holiday. I won't get into that. This is not what this is about. This is actually about a couple of things, including a lesson in Tantra and a lesson in me. I have been writing poems since I was about 8 years old. And I want to write a book of poems. I had about 3 sets of poems, and each set was like about 50 poems each. And I lost them at different stages of my life. I haven't found my folder with my poems and quotes, like the stack of them that I have now. But I have been finding other things, other types of poems. Not the poems about everyday life, but the poems in regards to my yogic experience. What I want to read to you is actually a story that I wrote based on 2 of my teachers in the past that I call Ma and Pa. This journal that I wrote it in was damaged by water, especially the top part of it. And most of it are my notes on Raja Yoga, which we have not gotten into yet. When I started doing my yoga teacher training, my very first one, 10 years ago, and I graduated 10 years ago, started it in 2008. I learned about a divination, being able to conversate with the goddess Kali, something which is rare and tough to do. These conversations have led me to open up my eye when I wrote poems about people that I would just meet and don't know. Anywho, I wanted to share these group of stories with you. They're gonna be like sutras at this point because a lot of the words are gone pretty much. So some of it won't make sense, but it's okay. I think you'll get the drift. Part 1, Pa. Ma and Pa lived in a quaint home, surrounded by hills and valleys. The desert sands covered their home like fine gold. Pa was a mountain man who lived with nature. When I appeared here, I first saw Pa. I was in a wilderness. When I saw him, he was in a clearing. He was my door. He never asked me to join him. He looked at me until I realized what I needed to do. I walked towards him, and he turned and walked away. I followed in silence. Once I saw the golden home, I ran and fell at the door. Pa liked to fix things. People would always ask him to fix their things. He would do so, but it would always take a lot of time. One day I asked him why it took so long for him to fix other people's things. He replied, I live to serve. I already know myself, so it's quick to fix my things. However, I don't know these people's things very well, so sometimes it takes a while for me to fix their things. I looked over and saw some of Pa's things in a corner. They needed to be fixed. I went over to fix them for him. I looked at him sad. He must have stopped me, but that was blurred out. He lifted my face and said, I live to serve. I serve myself by serving others. At times, I need to work on other people's things so that I can fix my things better. How else can we continue to serve if we do not learn? See? Look there. I looked in the corner and Pa's things were fixed. I looked back at him, astonished. He motioned me to look again. I looked, and there were different things that needed to be fixed. I looked at Pa again, and he smiled. Ma looked upon us, smiling. The other part was blurred out. Let's continue. One day, Pa was fixing a thing. When he was fixing, I would go into his library and look at his books. I saw a book with no title, no words. I ran out to Pa to ask him about this book. As I reached him, I paused. I became very interested in how he fixed things. He looked up at me and said, "Come here." "I'm already here." "I wasn't talking to you." I looked at him, then turned my back to him and sat down with the book now in front of me. He spoke words I did not understand. He whispered something to me that sounded like a song. I turned around to face him, and he looked upon the space between my eyes. I opened my eyes. I understood how to fix my things, which I never understood before. I turned around, and the book had a title. My name was the title. I walked away and put the book back in the library. Ma touched my head, smiling. Part 2. Ma. When I got to the door, I fell at the door. I lifted my gaze and lifted my hands to reach, and I touched the feet of Ma. She looked at me, but I couldn't see her. I could only see her eyes. It was daylight, but I could see the night sky and stars in her eyes. At night, I can see the sun in her eyes. Either way, my head hurt if I looked too long, so I would look at her feet most times. I longed to be able to see her eyes. Sometimes she looked into mine. People would say that Ma was a psychic. I would say she is more. Ma would say things to me that I wouldn't understand. After Pa showed me understanding, I realized she would talk to me from the past or the future. When she spoke to me from the past, I would understand her words in my dreams. The future part was blurred out. One day, I tried to explain this to my friend, and Ma scolded me. My friend thought she was mean, and I replied, "She scolds me in the present." My friend didn't understand, and I never spoke of Ma to anyone else afterwards. Ma would go to the wilderness and stay there for a while, and she would always come back with flowers. Sometimes she would come back with grain. One day she showed me a bear skin. I asked her where the bear skin came from. She said, "I found this demon in the wilderness devouring you. I slayed the demon and had to skin it to keep it from you. As I skinned the demon, Paul went to fetch you. Am I not your child? I asked. Ma looked into my eyes and said, all are my children, even the demon I had to slay. One day, Ma took my hand and we went to the wilderness. There were many flowers. I wanted to pick them, the pretty ones. Ma wanted to pick them too. I tried to stop Ma, but of course I couldn't, not forcefully anyway. So I screamed, Ahimsa, which means nonviolence. Ma looked at me and I saw flowers in her eyes. I started to cry. As my tears fell on the flowers, Ma opened her hands. The flowers came unrooted and floated in her palms. I looked at the flowers. They put their roots in her hands. I looked at her and she asked what color I liked today. Blue! I was testing Ma. She lifted her arms and there was a rain shower of blue flowers. Green! She lifted her hands and there was a rain shower of green flowers. She then wrung some leaves out of her hair and it became rainwater. I brought the rainwater to Pa. He drank some and made me drink the rest. Ma looked upon us and smiled. I said, thank you, Ma. She looked at me and said, thank yourself. These came from your tears. For a long time after, I tried to get the flowers to grow in my hands. I would go into the wilderness and I wouldn't be able to cry. I didn't want to pick the flowers. I followed Ahimsa. One night I came home sad. Ma looked at me. I could not look back. I cannot teach you certain things. I can guide you, but you must learn on your own. Sorry, everybody. The rest of that was blurred out. Going back to the story now. The next morning, I went to the library and got the blank book. After I received my understanding from Pa, I ran past Ma as she smiled. I ran into the wilderness and looked at the flowers. I opened my hands and a grain formed in them. I didn't know what this was until a bird came onto my hand and started to eat the grain. When it had its full, it left and I closed my hand. When I opened my hand, a deer ate my grain. I ran back to Ma and she smiled at me. She called me Amma and touched my forehead. I said, thank you, Ma. And she said, thank yourself. You can fix the animals. You can feed them. This is why I had to slay the demon. He kept stealing the food. Amma means food, everybody, in Sanskrit. That's it for now. I wrote that in 2010. I shed tears now knowing that it is a lesson in Tantra and some of the magical powers that Tantra bring, especially when a Shiva and a Shakti are synchronized, and what children can learn when the universe is formed from pure and true Tantra. I don't know if I'll be able to share the wonderful gifts of Tantra with you. I don't know, even if I do, that you'll be able to understand them. I guess it doesn't matter. Of course, I thank you for listening. I thank you for taking it in. I thank you for your discriminative discernment. I thank you for your openness, your surrender. Whether you are friend, foe, teacher, master, healer, man, woman, demon, snake, I thank you. You add to my illusion this reality in order for me to ascend. And at the end of the day, that's all I ever really wanted. No matter how much I fought it or feared it or shut down because of it. Thank you. Enjoy your Christmas night.